Welcome into the Energy Tech Podcast presented by OpSite Energy. Today we have a special guest from Canonsburg, PA. We got Stanley Schurdak in the house, and today we've kind of got a special little episode. Stanley is with CNX Resources. And Stanley, what is your title here?
I am supervisor of our DOT compliance group.
Supervisor DOT compliance group. So me and Stanley have been working together a little bit on and off, just little small things here and there for like 18 months or so?
Oh gosh, yeah, probably 18,
yeah.
2 years almost, yeah.
So I'm a past life regulatory guy, and we actually are engaged in a little bit of an audit that's happening, a small CRM audit, a light one, thank God. But Stanley is here today in the studio because he has a special request of me, because you're currently an MBA student, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
And how far into that program are you?
This is my fourth month. So first semester, fourth month. Yep.
And is that like an 18-month, two-year program, or how does that work?
Yeah, it depends on how many classes you take and per semester, but typically about 18 months to 2 years.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I got. So where's this through? Where are you going?
Yeah, this is through Oklahoma State University.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
And is it an energy MBA, or is it specific, or is it just?
No, nothing specific. Just
okay.
Management business. So. Pretty straightforward.
Cool. Yeah, well, I think an MBA is a great thing to get, and I think it's even greater to get once you've started your career because it means so much more to you. I would say, in my experience, I went to LSU and got an MBA, but it felt like getting that MBA was about the equivalent of being 10 years as a manager and working in business.
Yeah.
All kind of crunched into a year and a half, 2 years. But I think it meant more to me getting it later in life instead of 20. Just finishing and going into grad school and then getting it when I'm 22. But having gotten it later in life, I was 35, 36 when I started it, I think, it really has helped me a lot. And I had a lot of more perspective working with the projects and all the stuff like that. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I think you have a leg up once you've been in the industry for a while. Because there's a lot of terms that they throw at you through the courses, and you kind of go, oh, well, I know what that means, So it's not brand new.
Or there's some practical application. So the cool thing is when you're working, too, is a lot of these projects you can incorporate the things you are already doing at work and getting paid to do, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully you have some more opportunities like that. But so one of the things Stanley called and said, hey, man, can I interview you? And I think most of it was around leadership. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. We can have you on the show. We'll see if it makes a podcast or not. But I'll cut him out and I'll get him cut and straight for his work that he has to turn in for school. But the assignment is y'all are what? You're interviewing?
Yeah, we're interviewing managers.
Okay.
And primarily interviewing them on their perspective on leadership.
Right.
So.
And I did cheat a little bit. Stanley gave me a few questions up front, and I kind of thank God, because some of these are like, man, you don't really think about leadership a lot, even when you're a leader, unless you're coaching someone to be a leader. And when you're asking these questions, I'm thinking like, well, what is my philosophy? I haven't, thought about it in a while. I mean, there's certain ones you get, but, anyways, I think we'll have a good time with it. So anything else before we get started, Stanley?
I think we hit on all the high points. So
cool. And in the studio today, we have a newbie. We have Mr. Brian Martin from the OpSite Energy. We're shorthanded on studio people, so he is learning. He's doing a great job, so we welcome him in as well. But yeah, man, whenever you're ready, we'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Jeff, definitely appreciate you having me on today. So, like I said, we'll try to keep this 15 minutes and see what we can come up with.
All right.
So, I am interviewing Jeff Perry with OpSite Energy. He's currently, your role is a CEO, is that correct?
CEO, yes, sir.
All right, CEO. So we're going to go over leadership. So, in general, how do you define leadership?
How do I define leadership? So, to me, being a leader and being a good one is really a lot about having influence and empowering not just yourself, but your teams and your people and people like that. So it's not always about having the right answers or not even close to having all the answers, but how do you inspire teams as a leader through a shared vision and get to the goal you really want to get? So again, a strong leader kind of sets the direction. It's their job to remove obstacles. It's their job to put tools in the hands of the teams that they lead. and it also is to give them autonomy, right? At the same time, give them support when you see things they're needed. So to me, that's kind of again, I'm cheating because I went back and kind of thought about it a little bit. So, but to me, it's about influence and empowerment. So
yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. I think there are a lot of leadership theories out there, and I think those are some of the ideas that those encapsulate. So, from your personal experience, when did you begin to see yourself as a leader?
So, probably unfortunately, this probably happened when I was much younger. Dad was kind of like a minister, a music minister. I wouldn't call it a preacher's kid, but it was definitely a strict household, and I was kind of a troublemaker. And you get your group of buddies, and if you know you have influence at an early age to get guys to do things, that's when I kind of understand, like, oh man, I've got a lot of power here. Like, I need to be careful with that, so my friends don't get in trouble, or maybe I'm using it for some other devious reasons. But I think at some point early on, outside of business, I was like, hey, I've got leadership ability because I can influence people and have them do what I want them to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not really, I wouldn't call it manipulating, but in business, it was probably very early in, like, when I got into oil and gas. I could just easily see that I was getting better results than my peers. And when those peers started to come to me to get better, I was like, wow, either it's not just, hey, I'm getting better results, but they want to understand how that is. And it just, I was a lease operator, and this is like 2006, and I was getting better results from my wells. I was trying new things. I was pushing the limit on optimization, and they all kind of came to me eventually and were like, hey, kind of show us what you're doing. Can you come spend time in my route, et cetera? So.
Gotcha. Okay. So lease operator is kind of that circumstance that kind of led to that, seeing yourself as a leader.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, goes back to when I was really early age, but but as far as in business, I had a lot of jobs leading up to go into the oil field, but in the oil field, once I got there, I was like, okay, this is a lot of freedom to do what I want to do. They just gave me the keys to a vehicle, go do your own thing for 10 hours and come back and report, right? And it's like, well, shoot, that's a lot of freedom to innovate, a lot of freedom to optimize, and I was able to do that. And when you come back and you kind of, you still meet up with the guys, at the office once a day or twice a day, whatever. But at the end of the month, we're talking numbers, and it's kind of a bragging rights deal between, your LOE expenses and things like that. But that's kind of where it dawned on me that I probably had a shot in this industry. So
gotcha. Cool. How about your leadership style? Can you kind of define that a little bit and how that's changed over time?
Yeah. So really, my leadership style boils down to four things. Is one, I know I need to set a vision, especially in my current role. Not every role, but the one I'm in now, for sure, I've got to set a vision. It needs to be a very clear one. The next thing I want to do is align the team with the vision, right? And not that there's going to be naysayers, or, there will be for sure, and I'm not always looking at full buy-in, but if we don't get buy-in, it's hard to get people to trust what you're doing and align with the vision. So the next thing I'd like to do is give the team space to innovate and grow, if that's what they want, right? Some people don't want that. Some people want a little more spoon feeding, et cetera. But if most of the time I see giving people space to innovate and do their own thing, gives them a little bit better shot. And then culture, like I said, going back to culture, it's really about accountability. I'm always going to hold people accountable, as I want them to hold me accountable as a manager or leader. But I also want to give them autonomy at the same time.
Sure.
So the evolution of that, kind of past that, I think probably one of my biggest shifts in leadership approach came when I was like, I kept thinking to myself, how can I fix this? And I stopped asking that question, how can I fix this? And started asking myself, how can I help my team solve this problem?
Gotcha.
And it's a different way to think about it, because I can easily go fix things many times, or maybe I can't because I don't have that certain skill set. But when I started to think in that terms of what tools do I need to develop, or what can I do to make sure this team is successful in here and I can sleep at night and not intervene at all, that's kind of the evolution of my process. So.
Gotcha. So would you say that you kind of had these kind of four ideals over time, or has this been a recent development?
It's I'd say it's over time. So it's I've been in different jobs, different management positions that require different things. I've been the head of IT at a pretty large company. IT people are a lot different than when I'm the head of pipeline integrity, and I've got 12, corrosion techs out there, or the head of damage prevention, or running a control room that's 24/7 and having guys on 12-hour shifts, So it really, every job's a little different, and you kind of hone your skills every time, but it all comes back to influence and empowerment to me at the basis of it in my mind. So
Sure. Absolutely. So let's talk about leadership characteristics. So what are some of the most important what is the most important characteristic that a leader should embody, and why?
So I think, to me, it's integrity.
Okay.
And to me, without integrity, it's hard to build trust,
Mhm.
and the trust is the foundation of everything we do in business. And I'm a big proponent of Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Mm.
At the bottom of that pyramid is trust, right? Because it all starts there. And if there's distrust, you're not going to get buy-in. You're not going to get the results you want, et cetera. So integrity is the first one. People will follow leaders that they respect, and people do not respect people with low integrity.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're trying to have influence and empowerment, influence is about respect as well. So, if people respect what you're doing, along the way, I've found that also coaching and mentoring others kind of sharpens my own leadership skills. But I think integrity to me is number one.
Okay.
In everything. So
Great.
For many years, I was head of integrity and pipeline integrity and things like that. And actually, one of these jobs I came into, they just called me director of integrity, and everyone freaked out that, thought I was there to make everyone good people. But I was like, I'm worried about the pipeline. So
right.
Anyway.
More than one meeting. Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. So does this, characteristic of integrity, does that influence, or is that a part of the strategy you use to make decisions under pressure? How does that play in there?
I don't think it's really a strategy. I think it's just kind of in you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Subconsciously, it's there. When you make certain decisions, you need to think about it, depending on the leadership position you're in, like, what are the consequences? Obviously, what is the cause and effect going to happen, but how will people perceive what you did as well as a leader, and everyone's going to perceive something different. Everyone's got a different lens on. So someone in accounting may have a lens on, hey, I really don't like, what he did. And then someone in operations say, well, this makes complete sense. Right. So, it's about getting that vision out there, mm-hmm. To me, and all of those things kind of fall in line. So,
Sure. I guess, do you have any specific strategies that you use when to make decisions under pressure?
To me, just making a decision is the biggest thing, and so a lot of times I said in my career, I'd rather make the wrong decision quick than the right, the wrong decision very quickly than the wrong decision very slowly, or no decision at all, right? Okay. So I think it depends on the situation, Stanley. If there's a short window, you're trying to, exploit an open window to go make a deal, or maybe, hey, we've got something that's on fire and just exploded, right? So pressure can mean many different things. So it's hard to answer to me like just one specific thing. But I think the thing is to remember is, let's get as much data as we can about the decision we got to make. If we only have a short amount of time, let's get as much as we can in a short amount of time. If we've got a week, let's get what we need to make the proper decision. Absent of that, we got to keep our heads cool, right? Cooler heads prevail, and if you're running around like a maniac, you're probably not going to make the right decision. But yeah, you got to put yourself in a culture, and hopefully it's not, what you mean high pressure, like there's something that exploded. But if it's high pressure politically in the office, or hey, you got some, big business deal you're going to deal, is you give yourself time to do that. Yeah. Hopefully you have built into your culture room to fail. Yeah. Because I believe in failing quick, and no one gets everything right the first go round. How many rockets do we jump into the sea? Like, yeah. It takes time, right? So the culture should be that failure is not a problem. Failure is a good thing because it allows us to learn something, right? So yeah. It's not always bad, but that one failure could have prevented 20 other failures that would have really burned you, right? So sure. Adjusting, learning as you go, and not trying to be a perfect person.
Gotcha. Yeah, sure. You mentioned a number of interesting points there. Would you say that you used any, or rather, what's an unconventional leadership tactic that you used, and how has that worked out for you?
God, I feel like almost all of my stuff is unconventional in a way, just because I'm a little bit quirky. I don't know that I have a bunch of unconventional methods. I thought they were, or here or there, but there's a lot of literature out there, a lot of books. I mean, you're going to school to learn how to do this right at a different level. There's just different styles. To me, it's not unconventional or conventional, because what's conventional? Like,
Right.
who's right? Like, there's no one that's right. Everyone's going to adjust, and everyone's got a different team they're managing, and people are people, and you may get 10 people on this team and 10 people on that team, and it looks completely different, and your headaches are completely different, and maybe you got a ton of drama on this team and very little here. Like I said, managing an IT group versus a pipeline integrity group versus a GIS group versus the controllers, like, you get something different with every one of them,
Sure.
right? And their concerns are different. Like, as a group, they have, this is what I'm worried about. Well, this group's worried about this, right? And it's just different, right? So I don't know that there's a standard way to be the best manager. There really isn't. So,
Gotcha.
You
kind of adapt to this situation.
That's right. And it's really adapted to people. So, to me, leadership is about the people, and again, can you influence people?
Yeah.
Do they trust you? Will they follow you? Will they align with your vision? And if they won't, either you got an apple you got to deal with, or you need to, look in the mirror and see, what you're doing and not get the results you want.
Yeah. Good point. So speaking of that, like, obviously there's a lot of variation here. What do you think is a common misconception that people have about leadership, and how would you correct that?
I'd say, if I was going to say a common misconception, I would say you'd probably be talking about people that aren't considering themselves leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think one of them is that it's easy and it's a great place to be, and it's, where you want to be in life, right?
Sure.
I can tell you this, the position I'm in right now is the toughest job I've ever had, right? And it's because there's not a lot of people to fall back on. We do have a team, but the team is not geared towards accounting and IT and all these things. So it's, I don't know, man, that's a tough one. So I'd have to think about that a little longer.
Sure. No, that's good. Got a couple more here. Want to cover real quick?
Sure. We may be over on time, but if that's okay with you, that's definitely okay with me.
Yeah, but better to cut back than try to lengthen it out, right? All right. What about what steps do you take to improve your leadership skills?
So, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm not a guy who likes to pick up a 400-page book and read about leadership. I have many times, or not many times, let's say a half dozen times, a dozen times, something like that. But you really, to me, it's seek out mentors, right? And not just any leader. Seek out the leader that inspires you. Seek out the leader that gets results. Seek out the people that you respect and that have integrity. And, seek those people out. Other than that, solicit feedback from your teams as well. Like, do that 360 review. I know that's kind of a catchword 10 years ago, but get that feedback, and if you go to get that feedback and everyone's like, yes, you're perfect, you don't have the right culture in place.
Yep.
Right? So, like, even Brian yesterday, he was like, I could tell he didn't want to give me good feedback, and I was like, no, give it to me. Like, I want to hear it, right? Yeah. Like, I don't want anyone kissing my ass here, right? It's not about that. It's, I want to know what's going on, and I think if you build that trust there, and again, back to that trust foundation, he's able to give me that feedback because he trusts that I'm not going to use it against him later on in life, later on down the line. And that's really the same thing you want in your peer groups, and your teams to have that same piece where everything's out on the table all the time. It's transparent culture. It's a culture where it's okay to fail. In fact, we embrace it because we're learning from it, unless it's just, a really bad one. But, find a good mentor. Hit your wagon to them. It's always good to hang out with people, I think, that are 20 years older than you. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but I guarantee there's someone out there who can help you in your life and your career who's been there. Yep. And it doesn't have to be dad or your uncle or anything else. Like, find someone in business. There's people out there that'll help you. So,
gotcha. That's great. It's a great advice. All right, let's talk a little bit about teams.
Okay.
How do you handle conflict within your team or organization?
Well, It depends, Stanley. So it's different types of conflict, different types of handling, I suppose. If we're talking about conflicts with within under my team, is that what you mean? Like
Yeah.
a couple folks? Okay, so like we're running a control room here. Not that I anticipate we're having a ton of conflicts, but we got about 15, 20 folks. But I do know in these environments in a control room, it's 24 hours a day. Most of these people are running a 4 to 7, maybe longer day shift. That's 12 hours straight. You're right beside another body, even to the point that you've been with them so long, like you may not even like what they're eating for lunch, right? Like it's just, oh, here we go again. But those types of conflicts within the people, it's to me, it's we get down with them. Is this conflict as a part of the shared vision? No. Does this conflict, if we mitigate it, is it going to be better for the shared vision? Most likely, yes. But I think it's you talk to each of those guys, gals individually, and let's hear both sides of the story. And once you feel comfortable, bring them together, and let's also hear both sides of the story. So a lot of times these conflicts, I think, are coming down to communication issues. And I probably learned more of this in marriage therapy than I did in business. But how do you communicate with these people, and how do you come in there as a therapist, so to speak, and have these folks communicate with each other? Because just like it's an old saying, and everyone says, we got more in common than we do not have in common, right?
Yeah.
So we share like the same DNA for like 99%. Like there's not much difference about us from a biological perspective, but it's the culture that makes us different. So I think it's just how do you find where you do have common ground. We're all got to work together anyways. So if you can't figure it out, then someone's got to go,
Sure.
right? Or
Yeah.
both of you. So you just get them together and just run through that session like you would when you're again in your therapy session. I mean, that's how I handle it. If it's a one-on-one. Is there any other conflicts you were talking about there? Or am I off on a tangent here?
You hit it spot on. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
perfect. Yeah. Okay. How about during times of uncertainty or change within an organization? How do you keep employees motivated, and engaged at work?
So to me, it's about transparency and communication. Transparency is somewhat easy. You would think it is. For some people, it's not so much, but communication is not always easy. It's hard to understand, again, what everyone's lens is, how they heard things. Even an email can go out and it means something different. So for the communication piece, I think it's the email, it's the one-on-one, or just in passing, just making yourself available and making yourself a trusted leader. People are going to bring up stuff to you. You don't want every little, thing that everyone's upset about, like little tiny things, obviously at my level, as far as like a CEO or executive level. But I think if you're transparent with people, you over communicate, you don't sugarcoat anything. Explain the situation to everyone, share the pain with them, empathize with them, and you'll be seen as a human being, right? And
Sure.
and if you're feeling that and experiencing it with them, you're going to try to bring them to the right solution. So
Gotcha. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. If leadership were a sport, which one would it be and why?
this is an easy one. So it's football for sure.
Okay.
For most teams, okay, because the diversity in the sport of football is just it's so much mirrors so much the workforce. So
Okay.
let's look at it as a diversity of athletes. So you got a 350-pound lineman who is super powerful and nothing but power, slow in power, maybe a little bit fast, but then you got guys that weigh 160 pounds, literally that are super speed and agility, right? So same thing in business. You've got people that do different things, maybe not from a size or weight advantage, but skill sets and things like that. So football to me is the sport where you've got a quarterback. Past that, you've got several coaches. You've got specialized coaches, and then you've got skill players, and then you've got position players, and you've got people that are okay blocking and tackling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you got the guys that are okay blocking, and then they got to go do this one thing and save the day. Maybe it's a tight end screen or something like that. But I think football, there's not many other sports that are like it. Maybe soccer, but I don't know anything about soccer. But I think American football, is the one I would go with. So
Great. No, that's a great analogy. Really appreciate that.
Yep.
Well, I think that wraps it up for us. Again, Jeff Perry with OpSite Energy. Definitely appreciate your time today, and see you around.
All right, and we got Stanley Schurdak with CNX, guys. Brian's going to take us now with this opening loop. There we go. Ryan, appreciate you coming in today. Stanley, appreciate that. Had a lot of fun doing that. So till next time, we'll see y'all on the Energy Tech Podcast.